Welcome to the Channel Champions podcast, powered by Evolve IP, hosted by Zach Anderson. Today, we'll explore the always evolving landscape of the IT, telephony, and communications channel. If you are a trusted advisor, strategist, IT consultant, or sales engineer, this one's for you. Today's guest is...
Welcome to the Channel Champions podcast. This is episode 15. Today, I have the honor of welcoming the president of Resourcive. He is a former Army Green Beret. He has more than 6 years of experience in the channel and was named in the top 101 executives and technology advisors by Channel Futures last year in 2022. He is a true champion of the channel, and I'm proud to welcome Mr. Kyle Hall. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Today, we are talking about the next generation agent and Kyle's sort of vision on what the channel looks like for up-and-comers like himself. So before we get into that, I want to go into some backstory. Tell me a little bit about, I believe you mentioned that you started at Resourcive in 2017. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And really, it was my first job out of the military. So when I was leaving the military, I met the owner of Resourcive and ended up starting here in a project management capacity.
Mm-hmm. How did you meet the owner of Resourcive?
I was going through. So there's some nonprofit organizations that are out there that really focus on helping veterans transition into their next mission, their next career. And there's a couple specifically that focus on special operations. And so I was participating in one called the Honor Foundation. Shout out to them. They do a lot of great things have done a lot of great things for me, as well as, my peers and those coming behind me. But I was participating in that one, and I was actually going through there with, I guess for anybody that likes podcasting, they may know this name, but John Allen, Mr. Bowen, was actually in there with me. He was a SEAL and was transitioning. And he had a friend who was in investment banking in New York. And John said, "Hey, look, I'll bring 20 transitioning special operations. So veterans, so, SEALs, Green Berets, some fighter pilots in there, so some aviation type people as well. And said to his buddy, you bring some executives who are in kind of finance, private equity, that sort of stuff." And the owner of Resourcive came to that event. I went to that event. We met each other, and that was the first event of an organization that then became a nonprofit that became Elite Meet. And so Tom Geske, who's the owner of Resourcive, kind of heard, what or saw kind of this value prop that special operations can bring to the private sector. He was all in, interviewed a couple of us the next day, and was really the first one from, the industry side at that event to really pull the trigger and go all in and bring some of us into the industry. So, I began at Resourcive at that event, as well as the gentleman that actually runs our business development function now. Was there as well.
So I know the first time that I heard of the channel, I needed some further explanation. So what was your, how was that explained to you, and what had you interested in the channel?
Yeah. So I guess I would maybe start by saying I had no idea this industry existed, prior to that. And I think that's probably true for most people outside of kind of our little corner of the industry. You really kind of have to know someone to get in, or be exposed to it. But the way Tom laid it out to me, is something that still resonates deeply with me. And I had some other opportunities at the time. I was transitioning, I was interviewing, I was looking around, and none of them were in this space. None of them were even in technology. They were in kind of construction management or things like that. And the way Tom described it to me was that we would be able to go in, engage with kind of mid-market and enterprise companies, which is Resourcive's primary clientele. Go in this really kind of servant leadership mindset and use this business model to bring a ton of value to them, and then not be charging them for that service, as well as truly be able to navigate the market on their behalf in an agnostic way that was focused on producing outcomes for them versus, peddling a product. And that resonated very deeply with me at the time. It still does. I mean, I talk about this all the time, both publicly, like in my LinkedIn profile and that sort of stuff, as well as internally in sharing the vision with our team about who we are, how we exist in the space, and how we look to be with our clients.
And do you think, or I guess, how do you think your time as a Green Beret helped you in, move up into your current role as president?
It's kind of funny. I see a whole lot of similarities actually between what I did as a Green Beret and what we do here. And I'll circle back to like my current role as president, but I'll just start with kind of the business model, and I'll talk about what Green Berets do, because a lot of people don't know this, right? People think, oh, Green Berets, special operations, like, all they do is run around and kick doors and do these top secret missions and stuff like that. And, the core mission of special forces or Green Berets is to work by, with, and through partner countries, and their military forces to help execute on Uncle Sam's strategic objectives, whatever those are in the region, right? So when I would go overseas and do deployment, we were never working by ourselves. We were working with, a host nation military, or when I was in Afghanistan, we were partnered with the Afghani special operations, working by, with, and through them to lead them to execute on, shaping operations in an area. And really, as we position ourselves as a technology value creation partner, but as a trusted advisor, or an agency, at the end of the day, like, we don't internally have a product, right? We're using the vendors and their portfolio of products, making sure that it is the right fit vendor with the right fit product to match the desired outcome. And so all of that type of, planning, diligence, and then ultimately leading the execution and seeing things get done, but, through influence, is actually like remarkably similar. Obviously the tool set's much different. I'm doing it from the comfort of my own home now, versus being out in a desert somewhere. So it's certainly much more comfortable. But there is a surprising amount of carryover. As far as my role as president, coming up with shaping a compelling strategic narrative that gets my internal team aligned with the needs of our clients, the needs of our vendors. And then in our space, we work primarily in private equity owned companies. So also the needs of the private equity firms, like that aligning and, need to deeply understand all of these stakeholders' roles and what they're looking to accomplish, and chart a path forward that is considerate of all of those, is again a place with a whole lot of carryover. When I'll reference Afghanistan again, but I mean, some of the missions I would go on, we're working with Afghan local police, Afghan uniform police, Afghan army, U.S. assets, sometimes other foreign assets. So, I was in Helmand, so there was a lot of Brits there. That sort of thing, right? You have a lot of stakeholders, and trying to align all of those towards a compelling narrative and something where, you can win. There's a surprising amount of carryover, especially in the enterprise space, right? I mean, there's really no engagements that we work on that don't have a very, very diverse set of stakeholders, all with their own considerations. And so needing to pull all those together and chart a path forward is, something that I've been doing here for 6 years, but, was doing for 8 years before that in a totally different capacity.
And does Resourcive work internationally? Like, has that had some carryover too? Like your ability to work with other international groups, has that helped you maybe branch out into the international market?
We do work some internationally, but I wouldn't say that like I've had a ton of carryover there. I mean, my primary area of operations in the military was in the Middle East. I spoke Arabic to some extent, right? Certainly, I would not consider myself fluent, but could get the job done. Haven't needed that the last 6 years, but that kind of approach that we applied as Green Berets, because what we do, I mean, we would go live with these people in their conditions, and really like that rapport building, that level of understanding, absolutely carry over there for sure.
Right. And being able to be aware of different cultural norms, and that's there's even in the States, like there's a lot of different cultures and melding, and we're a big melting pot. So there's, I'm sure, some carryover there with just, especially with large enterprise or mid-market customers that do have an international reach or what have you. You have to be good at reading the room and being understanding of different cultures and different expectations. So
yeah, it's another level of empathy, right? I mean, it brings a whole new level of empathy when you're working with someone and you're trying to get them to go do something, but like, it's life and death. I mean, you're trying to take them on a combat mission and lead them on a combat mission. Like, you need to be pretty empathetic to their concerns and considerations and those sort of things, right? So it's a different level of listening for sure.
Is it normal to become the president of a company within 5 years? I mean, I don't know. When did you actually get to the president level at Resourcive?
I've been in this role for about 2.5 years.
So how did you do it so quickly?
Well, it may be worth kind of calling out that, I mean, I'm very passionate about business. I mean, even when I was in the military, I mean, I had a startup, that I had done. When I got out, I pursued my MBA while I was working here. I don't know if it's normal per se, but what is normalcy? I don't know. That seems like something that someone would hold up and say, "Oh, this is or isn't normal," and that feels like a box that someone would put themselves in. And I try not to do that too much. Right. I try to show up and bring whatever I can to the situation and try to be what's wanted and needed at the time. And it's a pretty dynamic space that we're in. In these agencies, if I look, at kind of my peers who are out here in the space, and there's a couple different flavors of companies. Some of them are lifestyle businesses, and I think when I came into Resourcive, there was some of that, but there was a goal to really operationalize and try to grow and scale. And I think I brought a level of energy and vision around that, as well as a team, right? I mean, I certainly don't do this by myself. I've got some really great teammates that see that vision and really help me execute on it. So is it normal? I don't know. Is it possible? Yeah, clearly it's possible. And I think there's a massive opportunity in our space right now for, people who want to come in, have some of that vision, and the energy and the dedication to put towards it.
Yeah. What was it like when you did get named to the top 101 list for Channel Futures?
I thought it was cool. I think it was the inaugural list. Again, like, we're a young industry overall though, right? From what I can tell, it's roughly, 22, 23 years old as far as kind of when, agencies really took off. And Resourcive was one of the first. Tom Geske was one of the first people doing this. And so we had a pretty long history, but overall, it's a very young industry. So, I think a lot of people are still figuring it out and figuring out how, what their approach is, right? You see a lot of people who are selling right now. They're taking some chips off the table. There's some consolidation happening. And there's also, in my opinion, at least, a fair amount of differentiation that's occurring as people are trying to, look at how they take this, what I think is a pretty unique business model, and bring as much value as they can to the clients, that we serve. So, I see a ton of opportunity, but to answer your question directly, I mean, I definitely saw it as an honor. I don't, maybe to a fault, I don't spend a whole lot of time kind of celebrating that type of stuff. It's like, I'm like, that's really cool. What's next? And that, again, to a fault, I think that I should probably spend a little bit more time celebrating wins, but, it's, I think, been part of my own kind of success recipe that I don't.
Do you feel like the channel or the technology space has changed a lot since you got into it in 2017? And what do you think that changes has really looked like, or what's the biggest change been?
From my perspective, it definitely has. One, I would say it seems more competitive than it was at the time. Also, just the expansion of the services and kind of technology pillars that we can consult on and that we can bring value to is absolutely expanding. When I first started, a lot of the work that Resourcive was doing, and when I went to industry events and talked to peers, it seemed like we weren't the only ones that were in this situation, but a lot of the work was around commoditized products. And now we're really try to work a lot more on transformative type initiatives, and work on products and technologies that have a higher strategic value to the business, than simply, hey, we can consolidate your network access, or we can consolidate all your pots, or like that type of stuff. And we still do a lot of that work, and there is value to our clients in us doing that work. I think where they get even more value is when we get into, these conversations that are transformative in some way, beyond the technology.
How and when did you realize that agents needed to provide a bigger strategic role with these end user organizations?
So I had probably started us on this it's a little bit of an internal transformation, to begin with, probably about 4 years ago, even before I was formally in this role. And what I saw from our perspective was we spent a lot of time getting clients, and then we would work, a project or kind of a point in time project. And what I saw is, as the channel was expanding, the clients also had, perpetual needs, right? You may come in and work on a project, but there's always another one and another one after that. And then by the time you work through the whole technology pillar, the ones you worked on initially, either that technology is being sunset, or it's time to work a renewal or a renegotiation, or something like that. And so, when I looked, there was this alignment between not only what would help our business grow, but also in what our clients needed. And when you can find alignment like that, in my experience, that is a real accelerant to growth, because one, you're going to be more valuable to your client, which is, people talk about, being sticky with your client. Well, the best way to be sticky with your client is to provide a lot of value to them, build this long-term relationship with them. But it's also really great for our business, right? I mean, it's something where as we come in, we build a lot of credibility on that initial engagement, continue building it over time on additional work streams that follow on. And then every logo we bring in, we're still doing new business with ones that we brought in last year and the year before, as well as the new logos that we're bringing in. So, I mean, it's been a great accelerant to growth for us, while also really, to some extent, being a competitive differentiator, right? Because a client doesn't want to have to go find an advisor for their network, and a different one for their voice, and a different one for their infrastructure, and someone else for the contact center, and someone else for the security, and then explain, what they're trying to accomplish as a overarching, business objectives to all of those people and manage all of those relationships. They really, if you're going to hold this space as a trusted advisor, you got to be able to do it across a pretty wide breadth of technology, because you're going to spend a lot of time with that client. And that time needs, and the information that you collect in that time needs to be able to be used across multiple initiatives and across multiple work streams. And so that's what we try to do.
Do you think relationships between partners and suppliers has changed much in your time in the channel?
It seems like it on the whole. It seems like channel is broadly growing. I do think vendors are looking for different things from the agencies than they were traditionally. I think, and I would say rightfully so. Vendors are asking for, the agencies to provide more value than just being kind of a referral partner, right? Most people with mature channel programs have a bucket that a referral partner fits into, and we're not that, right? We're not just saying, oh, hey, there's a deal over there, go get it, right? We're doing a whole lot of work and bringing a lot of value to that, whether it's building an inventory for our clients and understanding all that's there, whether it's, collaborating with that client in a very deep way about the technology roadmap, and then being able to communicate that clearly, concisely with vendors. I think they count on us for that. And a lot of the feedback we've had from vendors, is that we're good at that, that we, provide a level of expertise around client needs that is not normal in the industry for agencies. And from what I see, it seems like vendors lean in with, agencies and consultancies that do that because you're actually providing a lot of value to them. And ultimately there's a monetary exchange happening. There's value that should be delivered in exchange for that.
So how do you think suppliers can deepen their relationships with partners like Resourcive?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you and I chatted about this a little bit when we were talking last week. This industry, there's elements to it sometimes that have seemed, especially coming from the outside and coming into it, that were, the way I would refer to them is almost like a good old boy system, right? It's like, very much like very relationship driven. And certainly we're relationship driven as well. I think what we look at though is we look at the foundations of those relationships is built on, bidirectional value exchange. If vendors who, we're really successful with, what we look for is how are you helping me deliver a better outcome to my clients? Because that's how I grow, right? I grow by delivering outcomes to our clients that other people can't deliver. And the way, to build a great relationship with Resourcive, at least, is help us deliver value to our clients. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Get your services implemented. Get them implemented well. Deliver a really great experience to our clients, and that's what we're going to build a relationship on. Because at the end of the day, like we can be friends, and that can be great. And, at industry events, we can grab a dinner and that can be wonderful. But if it's not providing more value to my clients, it's not helping me grow. Mm-hmm. And we're very growth oriented, right? And I don't know that that's true for every agency in the space, right? There are some wonderful lifestyle businesses in this space, with some people that have done very well for themselves and have, are probably creating generational wealth for their families. But we're trying to do that for a whole organization. Not just kind of an owner operator. I mean, we're trying to do this at scale. And the way to do that is help us swing above our weight class and deliver value to our clients.
Yeah, that's something that I'm working on a lot right now with our channel team is like, it's like you said, it's great to have relationships with partners, even at the TSDs, right? It's great to have those relationships, but what does it really mean? Like, is it more than surface level? Do you just take them out for drinks or golfing or what have you? Like, that's a good point. Like, what value are we really bringing as a supplier to the relationship? And I think if you don't have a plan of, implementing more than surface deep, foundational level value, I think that partners won't be willing to work with you. And additionally, I want the relationships with partners to be more than just, hey, when's the next deal coming? Because I think that's disingenuous. But at the same time, like, we always need to know what more can we do, and like, what are best practices for engaging with partners? There's some partners that come to the webinars all the time and chat with us all the time. We'll do account mapping and stuff like that. And, we're still figuring that out. But I think, if there's anything that we want the partner community to know, is that, these relationships are valuable, but we want to do more than just have that relationship. And I think there's a ton of different ways that we can do that. But, doing stuff like this, like sitting down with you, I think is a great way just to talk about ideas and grow together, because, the growth of the channel is really kind of three-pronged, right? You've got the supplier, you've got the partner, and you've got the TSD. And navigating those things as a supplier, or as a TSD, or as a partner, you've got to be willing to learn. And that's the purpose of this. Is I want to learn from you as much as I can. So,
look, I mean, I if I was giving any advice, I would say really, truly, deeply understand what that partner's strategy is to grow their business, and understand how you fit into it. And that requires some pretty frank and transparent discussions, and I think when I first came into the industry, I would say it seemed like there was a whole lot of, protectionism around that type of information. People were pretty closed and guarded, with what they were doing, how they were trying to do it, that sort of thing. My approach has been a little bit different. I try to share pretty openly and transparently our vision, and tell me how you can support it. And if there's a space for that, and you can really do it and really deliver the way that you say, great. Like, I need more, more effort in the direction that I'm headed. And so if you can do that, that helps me move, further, faster, better. So I don't know. Look, this is the only partner I've ever worked at. Right. So I don't know what other partners are like, in those kind of closed door conversations. But my approach has always been to be pretty transparent and open with what we're trying to do, what our larger and overarching objectives are, and, put it back on the the vendor or the TSD to tell me how you're going to help me with that.
Do you think there are folks in our generation, we're about the same age, so I can say that. Do you think that there are enough folks our age coming up into the channel to help, as the next generation of agent, for example? Like, do you see a lot of other folks our age coming up in the channel and supporting that foundational growth?
I wouldn't say that I see a lot. I do think there are some out there, that have built some decent brands for themselves in a short period of time. I see people who are leaving the VARs. I think, a fair amount of kind of my peer agencies, that are led by people in our generation. From what I can tell, most of them seem to be coming from VARs. So they're VAR reps who maybe have a couple key relationships and go out and, learn about this business model, see the opportunity, and launch it. Is there as many as there was? Look, there's a lot of agencies out there. From what I understand, it's 3,000 to 4,000, maybe more. But I think you kind of have to segment it to answer that question, right? I think there's a lot of them that, if we would talk about them, and they're like that lifestyle business, and so I think many of them are looking at what's their exit strategy. Maybe they have, either young people in their company that they can hand it over to. Maybe they have, maybe it's going to be a family business, but a lot of them seem to be selling, and so there's some consolidation happening at the agency level, that I think overall will probably prove to be positive for for the TSDs, for the vendors and the clients, overall. TBD though, right? I mean, I'm not sure. I have to, what I see here is as we get more resources, more staff, we're able to bring more value to our clients. So, at least anecdotally here, it seems like that's overarchingly a good thing for the end users, which if it's a good thing for the clients, it's going to be a good thing for the vendors.
True. So do you think that private equity is going to, like the way I see it, agents can go one of two routes, right? So they interject private equity into their business and potentially gives them an exit strategy, versus you don't go the private equity route and then you just kind of build it, not necessarily organically, but without the inclusion of private equity. I mean, is that, what is the exit strategy for somebody like you that, or anybody that hasn't interjected private equity? Like, what's the way out? Do you just, hand it down in the family, or what options do agencies have for an exit strategy?
Well, I mean, I think, you covered a few of them, right? I mean, you can keep the business as a going concern. I mean, these businesses are really great cash flowing businesses, right? So, I mean, that's part of the reason private equity really likes them. It takes time to build it. I think it's, if you've talked to anyone that started one recently, I'm sure they would tell you something similar. I think you had Aram on a few weeks ago, and I think he probably said something along those lines. It can be a real grind to start it. But once you have it, it's a really wonderful business model. So you can keep it as a going concern, and kind of run a lifestyle business, until one day you sell your book, essentially. And I think you've seen that, that's not unknown in other industries, right? I think the insurance brokerage would be a good place to look for kind of a comparison. For us, we're focused on growth. And so, we're fortunate to have, a large book of clients that we've been doing business with for a long time while still bringing in, a lot of new logos. And so we have some pretty strong organic growth. As far as the private equity investment, I mean, that's one way to do it. I think that when a private equity firm invests in a company like ours or in our space, they would look at it as a cash cow in some way, right? You've got this recurring revenue, you've got, relatively low carry cost on it. And so when you have that, you are then looking at opportunities for reinvestment. So whether it's going and buying other agencies or books and exiting them, or product expansion, whether it's, maybe you're looking at MSPs or you're looking at, VARs, like you're looking at bringing in additional capacity to create a company that has more service offering so that you get some of this vertical integration in your clients. As near as I can tell, those seem to be kind of the offerings right now. You can either sell the book as is or sell the business. And those are two different things, right? For us, I think the way we look at it is, we look at ourselves as much more than a book, right? I mean, we've done a lot of work on our operations. We've done a lot of work on our model to scale. And so, when we're having those types of conversations, even internally, and we're looking at our long-term vision, we very much look at ourselves as building, a business versus just building a book. And so I think the exit strategy kind of depends on how you've looked at that over time. If you have only, looked at it as building a book and building this recurring revenue stream, but not building the operations around it to support it, I think that your prospective exits are, a little bit more narrow. And I would guess that the valuation on those firms would be impacted. when you're in the data of a business like this and you're in it really deep at a product level, able to see kind of the churn that happens, what it takes to retain these clients, these books are very, very valuable, but they end without care and feeding. These things do churn over time. And as near as I can tell, the rate of that churn is increasing in some ways. I mean, you have it's easier to replace some of these technologies than it used to be. Just the rate of change in technology is increasing, right? So agencies really need to put work into operationalizing their, what they do. And it takes a lot to do that. I mean, you've got a lot of people out there that are running agencies, and they're, the primary salesperson for bringing in new accounts, as well as, working with the vendors. That's working in the business. You also have to work on the business. And if you're not, I think your prospective exits are, you have less options. That's not to say that these aren't like valuable businesses. There's some wonderful businesses that have been built out here in this industry.
Right.
Names people have never heard of, with the exception of their, 20, 30, 40 clients, whatever they have. But they're wonderful businesses.
What do you think motivates an agency that's been in business for 20 years? They've got a great book of business, but they're not quite ready to exit. Like, they've got plenty to live on and then some. What do you think motivates? Is there any correlation between those type of folks and like up and comers like yourself, as far as like motivation and why they want to keep going?
I think there's a base element of just liking to win, right? I mean, somebody that has done that, over time in this industry. Look, it's a hard industry. Okay. I mean, we'll start there. It's a grind to be in the trenches of some of these engagements to ensure the delivery, especially if you're focused there as an agent, to ensure the performance of some of these vendors, especially like traditional, where this industry came from in telcos. Like you're trying to manage the performance of telecom carriers. Like that's a challenging proposition, right? Like it's very hard to do. And so, I think there's an element of, just as far as back to your question, like the kind of common thread, I think there's a base element of just liking to win, right? Even when they have enough, so to speak, to support their lifestyle business, I think they just like to win. I also think that if they've been in this industry for any amount of time, there's probably a healthy level of the word I want to say is fear, but that's not right. Probably just concern about the base, right? And knowing that at any given time, one of your key accounts may have senior stakeholder changeover and a change of direction in what they're doing from a technology perspective, or who they're working with as an advisor. And so, it's kind of one of those things. You're either growing or you're dying to some extent. At a minimum, you've got to be growing just to maintain your watermark. You're going to have churn. I mean, I think pretty commonly accepted about 15%, a year churn.
Are there any technologies or solutions that you feel like should be getting more attention than they are?
Well, I'll tell you some of the ones that we're very focused on right now. I think they're getting a decent amount of attention. We're very focused on CCaaS and driving better customer experience and adopting AI in contact centers. But I think that's getting a lot of airtime, right? So I don't know that fits your question exactly. I think that's getting a lot of focus. I do think people are still kind of struggling to develop their vision around it. Like people at our clients, right? I mean, they're still looking and saying, okay, like what's our 2 and 3 year roadmap on this? How's AI going to impact it? Where is that a fit versus not a fit? All of those types of questions or conversations we're having every day. But I think that's getting a fair amount of airtime. Security is getting plenty of airtime. I do think infrastructure Like when I'm having conversations with clients, we'll refer to that broadly as compute, right? People want to talk about cloud or colo or infrastructure as a service. We'll look at that whole function very broadly. What it seems like to me, the way that the clients are headed is, call it a hybrid cloud approach, I think is kind of commonly what you would hear about it. I would just call it a multi-environment approach, and looking at, the right application in the right environment that's optimized for performance, number one, but for FinOps, basically for, is it optimized for financial performance as well? The thing that seems, and this would probably be, interesting from y'all's perspective, seems to not get as much airtime that I think it will in the coming years is VDI and DaaS, desktop as a service. I think there's a lot of value to companies there if they can get that deployed and get it deployed well. And it seems to fly under the radar a little bit, where there does seem to be very attractive business cases for it in the right use cases. I think that we will see conversations, continue to grow in that space. I don't know. You may know more about that than me, because obviously that's a main product and service for you guys. And I think y'all been beating that drum for a while. But it doesn't seem to have quite the airtime, not only with agencies, but even with clients that it could.
Right. Well, you've got a couple different situations there. I mean, you've got companies that have a legacy on-prem VDI solution. And then you've got, I don't want to say folks are scared of DaaS, but I think maybe they think it's just, they don't understand the full use case of it, right? Like how is it really going to help my employees, right? And I think a lot of time they correlate it with, it's only for remote work, or it's only for whatever. Like, that's the interesting thing, is like it fits so many different business needs. Especially, when you talk to companies that have an overburdened IT staff, which I'm sure you talk to all the time. When you take away the functions of like patching and updating and managing and all these things with your PCs or your laptops or any corporate issued devices, when you take that away, one of the big selling points is like, they don't have to do that anymore. So it's kind of twofold. One, for the organization that the agent is talking to, and then also to the agent, like, because you're already positioning yourself as an extension of their IT staff. Well, it helps you in that regard too. So yeah, you're right. I mean, and the other thing is, like, it's been around for so long that
it's like a slow burn. It's like a slow burn. So it didn't really get that flash in the pan that I think some of the other technologies maybe get. Right. And I think there's a lot of preconceived notions from stakeholders. I think some of the stakeholders that, may start caring about it more, I think there's a pretty strong security application, for it. And so I think you could probably build some consensus and clients that way, as well as operations. Like when you start talking about speed to onboard, speed to offboard, like that sort of stuff, especially with supply chain challenges, there starts to be some compelling reasons to really dig into, hey, how do we get this deployed? Like, are these constraints that we have, are they real constraints, or are they just, preconceived notions, and we really need to do more diligence on it? I think that, and I don't know what like the CAGR is on that, right now. You may, I don't know. But that to me seems like an area where certainly we could be doing more, but I think on the whole, it could probably be getting more airtime.
Yeah, there's I don't want to go into a whole Evolve IP commercial, but you're right. Like there's there is a lot of applications that, a lot of industries, I would say too, that would benefit and have, across the board.
I'll tell you, we started using it internally. I'll tell you the use case we use it for internally. We run a SkillBridge program. And so SkillBridge is a program with the Department of Defense where as service members are transitioning, so regardless of branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, any of them, in their last 6 months of active duty, they can execute a memorandum of understanding between a private business and their command, and essentially like their place of duty. It's essentially an internship. They're able to work for our company. We're able to give them exposure to the private sector, help them understand like, hey, here's what it could look like working here. Because part of the difficulty when you're transitioning is like, you just don't know what all's out there. But anyways, we run a SkillBridge program, and, these people are effectively interns, and we very much try to transition them to full time, assuming that they come in and they're a good fit and all those things. But you've got essentially these staff that are coming on board for an unknown period of time. 3 to 6 months is kind of the typical period. And while our goal is to transition into full time, we don't know that that's the way it's going to shake out. And so versus doing a full kit out like we do when we hire a W-2 employee, we stand them up on VDI. And we're able to control that environment, push it out to them, get them spun up on the very first day, versus, all the work that we would need to go through to go, acquire the hardware and ship it to them and all that sort of stuff. So, it's a very small use case internally. Look, we're not a giant company, but it's a good fit for that type of solution, for us. And most businesses have, some sort of workers or resources in their environment that are similar in that way.
Right. Well, especially if you have clients right now that deal in M&A or private equity or even BPOs, we've found that to be a pretty good use case. The ability to scale up a virtual environment. I'm sure just like you said, like you can get it spun up in a day or so what used to take, hours, right? I think it takes, I don't know, we've figured out somehow it takes like 4 hours to provision a laptop or what have you. It's a keystroke and a mouse click.
It's been super positive for us. It's way easier to onboard them. And we had to work through some of the technical challenges that everyone works through in these types of deployment, right? How are you going to get Zoom working really well in it? How are you going to make sure voice is stable? Like all of those sort of things. But sometimes I'll talk to clients and they're like, oh, voice doesn't work in it. Video isn't going to work in it. Like that's a preconceived notion. That's not a real constraint. It is something that you do have to work through. It is a legitimate consideration, but not a constraint.
Yeah. And I think there's merit to some of those concerns. Even call it 3 years ago, video wasn't great in DaaS, right? And there's been sort of this emergence of technology, basically, and this is something that we talk about, but real-time audio video optimization. Essentially what it's doing is it's pulling the local unused resources off of that machine to optimize the video and audio quality. So where that used to be an issue or, used to be a problem, right? Basically now it's not, right? So there's a lot of things that like you said, it's a slow burn that I think once these things are realized and more, it's applied more often, it's I don't know if it's going to be the next, Microsoft Teams, but, I don't
know if it's going to be that. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Microsoft will start bundling that product, bundling VDI with everything else and drive the adoption they did in Teams. Yeah. But that's kind of their strategy, but.
Well, that's actually, speaking of bundling, that's actually something that we're doing now. I don't know how this turned into an Evolve IP commercial, but thanks a lot, Kyle.
Checks in the mail. Right.
So Right. Yeah. So basically we're bundling like, the virtual environment. So like an 8 gig desktop, the storage, we include collaboration and voice. So Microsoft Teams, backup, and then Microsoft licensing for like $100. So, maybe that specific thing won't be popular, but it does get you thinking about like what you can do with DAS and like all the sort of ancillary and adjacent services that you typically would get from another vendor. So now you're basically getting that all in one. And we may not be the only supplier that does that, but it does as an agent, or as, if any other agents are listening to this, if you don't have to outsource or bring in a bunch of other vendors into a specific opportunity or a particular opportunity, it makes your life easier as well. And I think there's a lot of solutions like that. And I don't know, it's interesting to kind of think about how many moving pieces there are on any specific opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But what else? So you had a bold prediction for the channel. I think you mentioned something about you're going to be playing in the Super Bowl. I'm just kidding. No, I'm being recruited by the Vikings. So yeah, I'm just kidding. What's your
I mean, look,
prediction?
I'm bullish on the channel. Overall, I think there's from a couple different angles, right? I mean, I think you have kind of the area we primarily exist in is still very much kind of go to market motion, the sales side for the channel. I do think there's a whole other area right around systems integrators, that sort of thing. I think you see a lot more of that with SaaS companies than you do with telcos, and kind of the world we exist in. But I mean, my prediction overall and what you're referencing is, I think, somewhere in the next 10 to 15 years, some company is going to come out of, this agency side of the business and be at a level where they'll have a Super Bowl commercial. I think we saw a few years ago, CDW had one. So, you've got a VAR that had one. And, my assessment, the TAM is larger for us than it is for a VAR. The business model's better. The margins are better. And it seems to be, a lot of support from the vendor side and focus on the channel and on investing there. I mean, look, it's variable versus a fixed cost. Overall, that's a typically positive type of outcome from a go-to-market motion. Certainly I'm sure there's people that are way more experienced in this and may have different opinions there than I do. But overarchingly, I'm very bullish on the channel, and, the kind of the pinnacle of how bullish I am is that I think someone will emerge out of this and be at a level where I don't know if they'll do it, but could have a Super Bowl commercial. Like, I think that there are very, very big and successful businesses that are going to come out of this space. Exactly what they look like, I don't know that yet. Right. I mean, this is a dynamic space that we're in. There's a lot of consolidation happening. And I think a lot of different strategies that are being used as far as how do you leverage this business model. It's a very attractive business model, but how do you leverage it to provide as much value to the clients as possible using that business model, which is the game we're in. From my perspective, I think that's the game that wins over time. I think a lot of agencies are in, the relationship building game, and they're going to build strong businesses on that. I think the winners are ones that are going to look at this business model and say, how do I use this business model to, yes, like return a profit to shareholders, but also drive as much value as possible to the end users and to the clients and the stakeholders that we support there. And the winners that emerge from that, I think, are going to be large, successful businesses. And look, we see this, right? I mean, these private equity firms that are investing in our space, whether it's at the TSD level or down at the agency level, these are not dumb people. They have done a lot of diligence. They have done a lot of research, to know that winners are going to emerge from this space. And I think I think it will be at that level. I think that will be the level of winner that emerges out of here.
So what you're saying is you've already started planning what Resourcive's Super Bowl commercial is going to be.
Fortunately, I have a marketing lead, Josh Chorsey, on my team, and I'm he's got a better creative vision than me. So hopefully in the back of his mind he's thinking about that. But yeah,
there you go. That's awesome. So I know we're a little bit over an hour and it's gone by so quick. I always like to end with, if you could give yourself or anybody that is just starting out in the channel or the technology space, what would that advice be?
I'll tell you what supported me. And this is what I tell people when they're coming on too. It's very important to understand, I would call it the operational environment, but there are a lot of players on the field here. With the vendors, with the TSDs, with the clients, and within each of those players, there's a ton of different stakeholders. Try to deeply understand what those, people and their companies really care about in their roles, at a very deep level. And if you don't understand it, don't be afraid to ask. I think there's a lot of people in this industry that are very open, and approach this, especially now, from a place of abundance. I think some people have a scarcity mindset in this industry. If you figure that out, move on. There's people that approach it from a place of abundance, and they're out here to share, their knowledge and experience. Go, ask, listen, seek to understand, what all those people care about, so that you understand, how you can move in the space.
I love it. That's great. All right. Well, can you tell everybody how to find you? And I don't know whether that's LinkedIn or your website or anything like that.
Yeah, so we've got a website. It says how great we are. We're really great. It's at resourcive.com. Best way to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. It's kind of where I'm at. And probably the best way to get in touch with me there. So
that's great. And you have a podcast too?
We do have a podcast. Yeah, we call it The Wrap. It's Resourcive as a podcast. So RAAP. We got about 50, episodes. We interview kind of people that are at this intersection of technology leadership and procurement leadership. Sometimes some private equity operators. That's kind of the space we're in. Similar discussions to this. I think a little bit shorter. We try to go around 30 minutes, but, I think we got some pretty solid episodes on there, and I share pretty transparently how we do what we do and what our approach is, and how we see ourselves competing in the market. So
that's great.
It's been a good endeavor. I've enjoyed listening to some of your episodes. I know you're early on in this. I'll tell you what I told, my team as we were working on it. I said, we're going to do 50 and we'll evaluate them. I think this is one of those kind of endeavors. You got to put your head down and run and make the content, and see what emerges from it. And so it's been positive for us, and I'm sure it will be for you as well.
Yeah.
So.
It's been fun at the very least, but it's been great, man. I really appreciate the conversation, and we got to do it again because we probably could go on for another hour. So maybe we'll have you back on and go from there, but I really appreciate it. Everybody check out everything that Resourcive is doing, and thank you for your service as well. So, all right, that's it. Thanks everybody.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Channel Champions podcast. You can find this and all our episodes on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite streaming platforms. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, guests, or topics, please reach out to us. We appreciate you coming along with us on this journey and hope you'll be back for the next episode. Until then, stay tuned, stay connected, and stay inspired.